Huh?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third parallel section of the day 2 of our fifth Literary Studies Conference hosted by Sanata Dharma University. I am Tanto Didimus, I am your moderator today. In this session, there will be two presentations. The first one is entitled The Importance of Literary Translation, which will be delivered by our featured speaker, Ibu Lian Gouw, Ibu Kartika, Mr. Junaedi, Miss Maya Denisa, and Mr. Adipurwawidjana. And the second presentation will be delivered by Miss Rima Febriani from Universitas Pajajaran, entitled Welcome to My Space, the Use of English Literacy in Creative Writing Class. The time allocation for the first presentation is 1 hour, and the second presentation will be take 30 minutes. For the first presentation will be directed by Ibu Lian Gouw. So, Ibu Lian Gouw, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for being here. Does my mic work? Do I need the mic, or can you hear me there in the back? You're okay? All right. I don't see anyone from the board here, but I'm going to thank them anyway. So I'd like to thank the conference committee for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts on the importance of literary translation. After the panel, we will have a Q&A. So, as we go along, please write down your questions for each panelist as we move along, because we are short on time, so we cannot have you scramble for your questions after we are done. And I hope you do have questions, because this panel worked very hard on this presentation. So the panel has been structured to give you an idea why each of us in our various capacities feel that translation, in particularly the translation of historical and cultural fiction, is important. In this era of globalization, translations are taking center stage in the facilitating and the sharing of technical, cultural, and socio-political information. Among the many variables in translations, literary translation is definitely in demand and needs a specific mention and deserves special attention. Unlike technical translations that, aside from the familiarity with a specific topic or product, only require proficiency in the host and target languages, literary translations require a lot more finesse and bear their own weight as a means that allows the essence of one culture to be enjoyed worldwide through story. As language is an expression of a people's inner makings, it reflects attitude and sensitivities. Translations of novels enable readers around the world to enjoy the work of writers of different countries, and with that, not only become privy to these writers' techniques, but also get a glimpse into the souls of the individuals who the story is written about. A well-written novel provides the reader with the story of a group of people during a segment of time. The challenges these characters face and the way they overcome these challenges give the reader a glimpse into their culture. And thus, novel translations offer an introduction into a culture that is different than that of the readers. When, as an Indonesian diasporan living in California, I discovered the lack of Indonesian literature in the public library system, bookstores, and book club rosters, I felt driven to pay homage to my country by trying to effect a change into that situation. And I founded Dalang Publishing in 2011 with the idea to offer the Indonesian writer and translator a platform to launch their work in America and draw the American reader's attention to Indonesia's rich culture and vibrant history. However, it recently occurred to me that considering the current mobilities that people enjoy and the multicultural or international education opportunities, translation of historical and cultural novels can also be a powerful tool for individuals trying to find their way home. A powerful tool for individuals trying to find their way home as in their country of origin. It is encouraging to note that the appreciation of translated novels is on the rise. In the United States, Amazon's Crossings leads the way with its claim of 10% of all translations in 2016, covering 15 languages, including Indonesian. And until as recent as 2015, according to Gouw, the official United States agency that sells the register's ISBNs, only 3% of books published in the United States were translations. I'd like to take this opportunity to touch on the question of who would be more qualified to produce an accurate translation into English from Indonesian. Is it a native English speaker or a non-native English speaker? Local color and subtle cultural eccentricities are often lost when the translation has been rendered and edited by individuals who only have a mastery of the target language. I see this not only as a shortchanging of the author, who has poured onto the page all he has in terms of factual sensibilities, as well as deep and vivid emotions, but also as a shortchanging of the readers by depriving them of the pleasure of experiencing the unique elements of work that originates in the original work. In the translation process of English to Indonesian and vice versa, we deal with the Indonesian and Western cultures. The translator is immediately faced with the contradictory temperaments of two cultures. While Westerners tend to lean toward a direct approach, Indonesians tend to be subtle. These characteristics definitely are apparent in their use of language. Most of Western writing is rendered in an active voice and form, and the writing pays attention to word economy. Most Indonesian writing is rendered in a passive voice and form, and it uses elaborate description. This alone presents the translator with a problem right at the onset of the work. There are no rules in place for the translator to use as definite guidelines to work out such problems. The way translators go about this shows their level of competency. Good translators not only translate the words of the original word, they also translate emotion, atmosphere, and style. As a publisher of English language translations, of Indonesian historical and cultural novels. Dalang asks their translators to do the research necessary to ensure that the language fits the story's time frame and confirm that the data and facts that come up in the work are accurate. Among the myriad of elements to be mindful of, there's also the question of how much leeway needs to be allowed in the translation of one set of expressive sensibilities into another. At Dalang, we pride ourselves in creating translations that present the original work at its best, while adhering to accepted norms of Western writing. This is my contribution to this panel. Thank you. Now, we're going to move on, and the first person in our panel that I'm going to address will be my partner in crime, which is in this case, Penerbit Ombak. They partnered with us in producing Dasamuka. You have the two books up there. And unlike most translations, where the original cover is different from the translated cover, we have here two very similar covers. However, true to the translations of novels, there is a nuance and there is a very tiny slight difference. And it's up to you to figure out what the difference is. It will show you're paying attention to the work, which has been long and tedious, by the way. So, as I said, it is Penerbit Ombak, and it is today represented by Ibu Kartika Nurul Nugrahini. Ibu Kartika, can you stand, please? Thank you. Ibu Kartika is an Indonesian publisher, and she does not deal with translations. There is no need, while Ibu Kartika needs to speak English. And therefore, I have provided an appropriate translator, our own translator, Maya. And while I was going to introduce Maya at her session, I think I should introduce Maya right now. So excuse me for shuffling papers for a minute here. It is with great pleasure and deep gratitude to her spirit that I introduce Maya Denisa Saputra, the translator of Dasamuka, a historical novel by Junaedi Setiyono. Maya, can you stand, please? Thank you. I pushed the wrong button. Can you get me to where I'm supposed to be so I can keep time? Thank you. Okay. Meanwhile, we don't need to pay attention to him. We continue with the panel. So, Bu Kartika, can you tell us why your press publishes historical fiction despite the fact that it does not sell as well as more popular genres? Maya, can you translate, please?
Apakah Ibu Kartika dapat menguraikan kenapa penerbit Ombak masih menerbitkan novel sejarah meskipun buku seperti ini tidak begitu laku?
Baik, kami merasa optimis terhadap buku dengan tema seperti yang ditulis oleh Pak Jun. Bagi kami, berhasil tidaknya penerbitan sebuah buku bukan karena tingkat penjualannya yang tinggi, tetapi dampak apa yang diberikan setelah itu. Dan kami merasa bahwa novel yang ditulis Pak Junaedi ini memiliki kontribusi yang besar untuk mengisi sejarah lokal di Indonesia, terutama tentu dengan gaya yang berbeda. Kan biasanya penerbit Ombak menerbitkan buku-buku non-fiksi.
Based on the content of historical novels, we have high hopes for historical fictions. We don't think of a publication being successful simply because it has high sales. In our opinion, the success of publication depends on the impact it has on its reader. We feel that Pak Junaedi novel fills the need for information about local culture, even though it's a novel, and it's different from the academic work that Penerbit Ombak usually publish.
And where do you see the benefit of a translation of any of your titles?
Bagaimana pendapat Ibu tentang manfaat terjemahan dari karya yang diterbitkan Ombak?
Adanya upaya penerjemahan buku tentu berdasarkan nilai kepentingannya, baik dari segi ilmu maupun pengetahuan. Gagasan yang diterbitkan, yang dikemas dalam sebuah buku dalam bahasa tertentu, tentu memiliki tingkat keterbacaan yang terbatas ketika orang yang membacanya itu bahasanya hanya terbatas. Nah, disitulah pentingnya penerjemahan sebuah buku.
The benefit of translation will definitely apparent from an academic point of view. Any idea, opinion, or concept that is only conveyed in one language will only be available to individuals who master that particular language. In order to share information or make cultural exchanges, translation is almost a necessity.
Bu Kartika, what makes you decide, what is your criteria to ask for a translation of one of your publications?
Apa patokan penerbit Ombak untuk memutuskan sebuah karya layak diterjemahkan?
Tema yang kami upayakan penerbitannya adalah buku-buku yang memiliki gagasan besar, penting, dan dilihat dari ketersediaannya di Indonesia.
The titles we consider for translation from English to Indonesian offer important information and interesting ideas which will be new to Indonesia.
So, do you do any in-house translations?
Apakah di penerbitan Ombak ada bagian terjemahan sastra?
Tidak ada.
There is no special division for that.
What is the percentage of your historical fiction publications? What percentage of your historical fiction publications have an English translation?
Berapa persen jumlah novel sejarah terbitan Ombak yang telah diterjemahkan ke dalam bahasa Inggris?
Novel Dasamuka yang ditulis Pak Jun ini merupakan novel pertama yang diterbitkan Ombak kemudian diterjemahkan ke dalam bahasa Inggris, dan dalam hal ini saya mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Maya sebagai penerjemah, juga Ibu Lian dari Dalang Publisher yang mau bekerja sama dengan kami.
Terima kasih.
Dasamuka is our very first novel that has been translated into English, and we are very grateful to Maya, the translator, and also to Ibu Lian from Dalang Publishing, the publisher of the translation.
Thank you, Ibu Kartika, for all of your help during the process and for being here today.
Okay.
We walked a hard road, but we made it to the end. Go ahead, Maya. Translate.
Ibu Lian sangat berterima kasih sama Ibu Kartika, karena Ibu Kartika dan juga seluruh tim penerbit Ombak sudah bekerja dengan sangat keras, dan kami yang di sini semua tahu betapa kerasnya kerja yang dibutuhkan untuk menerbitkan sebuah novel. Terima kasih banyak untuk Ibu Kartika dan tim penerbit Ombak.
As a result of collaboration with various Indonesian publishers, authors and translators, Dalang Publishing currently has 9 titles under its belt from 2011 to 2017. Trust me, if you're working on a shoestring budget and a one-woman show, that is not an easy accomplishment. And it is my pleasure, and it is with great pride, that I now introduce Junaedi Setiyono, the author of Dasamuka, our latest. Junaedi Setiyono is a local award-winning author who lives in Adipurwawidjana, not too far from here, where he teaches in the English department of his alma mater, the Muhammadiyah University. Saputra is Junaedi's third historical novel. Let's give our author another hand. All right, John, your time for the grill. What compels you to write historical fiction?
Thank you, Lian. I read historical fiction because I want not only to present the beauty of language in the form of a story, I also want my readers to appreciate what happened to their ancestors while preparing for their own future.
You seem to focus your work on the Diponegoro War era. What fascinates you about this time?
The Diponegoro War era is fascinating because it proved that the Javanese could match the Dutch in warfare. The only way the Dutch were able to defeat the Javanese was through the deceitful arrest of Prince Diponegoro in Magelang. The Indonesian word merdeka, meaning independence, comes from that era. Prince Diponegoro used the Javanese word martiko, martiko, to describe his attempt to free the Javanese from the Dutch colonialism. And I also feel that the writing of the Diponegoro War era, given its specific characteristic, has the potential to become a certain genre in the world literature. This then would be something that the Indonesia can be proud of.
Yes, I totally agree. And so, what is the impact you hope your work to have on your readers, not only in Indonesia, but also abroad?
I hope that my writings has an impact on I mean that the Japanese, I think, need what so-called self-confidence. So my writing has proved that we as Japanese are not only equal to the Dutch but also equal to other nations in the world. So this knowledge
Can be projected?
Can be a project, for Japanese for their attitude. So by having such self-confidence, they will be resulting or giving something useful for the progress of human civilization in the world, I think.
Are you currently working on a new novel?
Yes, I'm working on my new novel. It is about the Javanese kingdom in the 12th century. Yes.
And do you feel that having worked with the translation with Dalang, Is that impacting your current writing?
Yes, I do feel that working with the translation of Dasamuka has an impact on my current writing, especially in the areas of dealing with the accuracy of historical event and mapping the plot lesson. Yes.
We do remember, don't we,
Yes.
the counting of the war people. Yeah.
I'm not very mathematical in my mind.
Well, you know, as a writer myself, and when I started to write, I, at one point, had the audacity to tell my editor, who tried to correct me or make me understand my work, I said, but it's fiction. And he said to me something that I have remembered ever since. And he said to me, Lian, sit up and pay attention. Life does not make sense. And life does not need to make sense. When you create life by writing fiction, you better make sense, or you will lose your writers. In other words, if you send 12 people to war, and the war is over, and you say 5 people died, 2 people were missing, and then that's the end of the story. Now we only have 7 people, we started with 12. What happened to the other people? You see, something simple like that. Thank you. Okay, now last question. How do you think the translation would benefit your original work?
I think the translation of Dasamuka definitely benefit the original work because it supports my attempt to globalize the Indonesian local wisdom.
That's a good reason to translate your work. Now, thank you very much, John.
You're very welcome.
You did your homework. Anyone interested in hearing a presentation of the novel Dasamuka is invited to come on Monday at 10 o'clock. Bu Eni, am I correct? At 10 o'clock at Sanata Dharma. Can you fill in the blanks, please? Which room?
It's across.
It is on this floor across from this room.
The other room.
Yeah, so what is the room called? So the room is called Kadarman for anybody whose Sanata Dharma is not their university. It is on this floor and it's across from this room. And we will have kuliah umum. It will be in Indonesian, and we will present kuliah umum, and then it's followed by a presentation of the translation of Dasamuka. So we will switch into English for that. And you can see how then Indonesian novels are presented to an American audience. Okay. So that's that. Now then, you go back to Maya. Maya, we did already the preliminaries. Thank you. Maya flew in from all the way from Bali and with the blessing from the great Mount Agung. And we are so happy that she can be here because it was very scary when she said to me, Ibu, I don't know, he is sputtering. And I said, Maya, do whatever you got to do, keep him calm until this is over and then you're on your own. But please. Because Maya, as a translator, and because of what this panel is about, is carrying the brunt of the panel. Maya was born and raised in what is known by the world as the Island of the Gods. And literary translation is something Maya does aside from her day job, which is managing the accounting department of a family business, two different things, huh, Maya? But she's good at counting. So I met Maya 4 years ago when we were assigned partners working on the translation of a short story for an anthology. Aside from her knowledge and the meticulousness she brought to the table, Maya impressed me with a very cheerful, can-do attitude. That's my girl. And she made a lasting impression on me with that. And so when I was looking for a translator for what I knew was gonna be a hard uphill ride, I turned to Maya. Because not only did I need the knowledge, I needed the spirit. And Maya, you've given it to us in spades, and I am grateful. Thank you very much. So, to business. Can you please tell us, Maya, why you are drawn to translating historical fiction?
I grew up with books on historical subjects, and being a bilingual person, it occurred to me that I could make a small contribution to my home country, Indonesia, by translating Indonesian literary works into English.
What started you on this path?
I first began translating texts as a way to learn Korean language because of my interest in Korean songs. Yeah, so I was a teenager back then. And I wanted to know what they meant. So I found that some of my favorite songs didn't have their translation available online. Hence, I attempted to translate the lyrics and post it online. Through that activity, I observed that there is a cultural bridge that translation provided. And at that time, I was that bridge. So that role actually made me happy. And my interest in professional translation process prompted my participations in Intersastra's 2013 literary translation workshop, and then subsequent collaborations with Indonesian authors and editors from Dalang Publishing placed me on the path of translating Indonesian literary works into English.
So what is the impact you hope your work to have?
I hope that my translation will serve as a cultural connector between the Eastern and the Western worlds by bringing the culture of Indonesia to Western readers.
Do you have a criteria about accepting work? Like if somebody says, Maya, do you want to translate it? Do you just willy-nilly say, oh yes, sure, I have another job? Or do you say, wait a minute, I need to know what I'm getting into? So can you tell us what is your criteria for accepting work? And do you have a preference of genre? Do you have any taboos?
Generally, I'm looking for the significance of the content and what emotional impact it might have on the readers. I don't have a specific preference on genre, as I believe I can always learn a thing or two from every genre. However, I feel uncomfortable with violent sexual scenes.
What attracted you to translating Dasamuka? And what did you enjoy the most? You must have enjoyed something when you were translating.
Dasamuka was the first novel I had opportunity to translate. Alongside with the learning opportunities, I saw that the theme was something familiar with, and I was curious to see what I could do to transform it into another language. Another piece of work written entirely in another language without changing its meaning nor losing the author's distinct voice. And what I enjoyed the most was learning about the situation set in the story. It was about the Sultanate of Yogyakarta in the 19th century and also about the Japanese culture in general. I was born and raised in Bali, and even though the two islands are within close geographical proximity, the cultures are quite different. And since I always enjoy learning something new, so I enjoy learning new things about Japanese culture which I didn't know before.
And what were the difficulties that you encountered?
Some of the difficulties I encountered was when I have to choose the right English idioms and phrases to relay the underlying messages accurately. Some culture-related words such as pesantren or kaputren required correct and concise explanations because of their place in the story, and that challenged me further.
How did you solve these problems?
I solved it by doing research. So I researched the topics to gain a full understanding, and then constructed a 3 to 5 word explanation. I worked into the narratives. Since Dalang does not use footnotes, footnotes are only used in academic works. In fictions, explanation should be part of the narratives.
So, did you find it working with Dalang, aside from different from working with other publishers?
I think every publisher has their own character, but Lian pays close attention to every single work that is published by Dalang, and she always forges a warm friendship with the author and a translator and everyone else involved. Well, it might not be a rare occurrence that a close and harmonious relationship is established between an editor and their translator and authors. I can be certain that it always be that way with other publishers.
So, what is the one thing that you took away from your experience translating Dasamuka that you think would benefit you in your career of translator?
The whole process was a new experience for me, and the numerous things I learned along the way regarding the translation business certainly benefited me. For instance, I didn't know about the technical aspect of the required type of alignment and margins for publishing before I worked with Dalang. I remember now that the content of the work is important, but a good presentation will help with its overall acceptance. And adhering to prescribed formats and edits will simplify the process.
If you have would-be translators walk up to you and say, "Wah, Bu Maya sudah diterbitkan," you know, bagaimana sih caranya? Which means, "Bu Maya, my God, your translations were published. How did you manage to do that?" What would you tell these aspiring translators?
Yeah, my advice would be to treat translating as any job, just like any job. Just be professional about the work commitments and pay respect to everyone involved. And the person himself or herself has to love to translations, because that love will go a long way to sustain the person, because translation business is not a smooth highway. It is filled with ups and downs, and always be willing to learn about new things or even unlearn things you thought you already knew.
So, thank you, Maya. Dasamuka is available for sale at the counter little bookstore that is set up at the end of where we have lunch. And after this session, Pak John and Ibu Maya will be there to sign the books if anyone is interested. Let me see. There's no foreigner here, so I don't have to explain the Pa and the Ibu. Okay. Why am I speaking English? Okay. Hard work begs acknowledgement and praise. Who else but scholars in Indonesian literature and respected literary critics would we turn to for endorsement? We are fortunate to have one of the 4 academia who agreed to endorse Dasamuka right here with us. And it is with pride and gratitude that I introduce Pak Ari J. Adipurwawidjana, lecturer in English Studies at the Department of Literature and Cultural Studies, Faculty of Arts at the University of Pajajaran in Bandung, yeah?
In Sumedang.
Sumedang. Yeah, when I was in that area, it was all one big area, but now, yeah. So, Universitas Pajajaran is in Sumedang. Let's give him a hand. Again, thank you very much for your generous endorsement of Dasamuka's translation. And how do you want to handle this? Do you want me to have the same format,
Yes,
or do
the
you
same
want
format.
to take the floor?
Yes.
You have 15 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. You want the same format?
Okay.
All right then. So then, for openers, can you please tell us what is your criteria for endorsing work? I hear you are a hard person to get.
Yes. No, it's easy to get me. It's just that people are not always pleased with what I say. So, if I would agree to endorse work, first is, of course, the work meets. If I read it as an ordinary reader and I'm impressed by the work, then of course the work is worth of endorsing. The second thing is I have to believe that the work, for a work to be like that, I have to believe that the work was written in conviction, and that is the writer really means what he wants to say, or she means what she wants to say, and that usually appears in the way the writer spends time and energy in writing it and working with the techniques and the various methods and the styles. Secondly, I have to believe that I am competent in making statements about the work, and that means, for example, in the case of Dasamuka, because it deals with 19th century colonial situations, which is my field of interest. I agree to endorse it. That when I say interest, I don't just mean tertarik. I mean I have investments, political and academic investments in the issues raised by the novel and the way the novel is written.
Is we can kind of skimp on the second question because you kind of folded that in, but I will pose it anyway because my question would be, what, in your opinion, makes Dasamuka a contribution to Indonesian literature?
Okay, so Dasamuka, I think I mentioned it before. One is that I'm interested. I have political and academic interest investments in Dasamuka in the period in the 19th century and formative periods in Indonesian. And I think the 19th century is important to understand in order to understand contemporary Indonesian history and culture and literature. And so Dasamuka is important because it deals with a period of history that has been presented in various ways, history books, novels, including, folklore, that's problematic. And so every time there's a new novel, especially a novel that's well written and well researched as Dasamuka, that contributes to our understanding of that formative period in history. So Dasamuka yesterday I said Dasamuka, the novel is the beginning of something, of the way an Indonesian writer can deal and address the issues of colonial times in a strategy that can speak from a people who have dignity. So I'm just following up on. I'm inspired by what Arjun had just said before, that that writing the novel, because when you write, right, you're presenting yourself to the world, and therefore at the same time, Dasamuka is presenting not only the Javanese or not even Indonesians, but every subaltern voice in the world that has not been able to speak before, in a particular because of the way of, because language does not allow us to speak in that way. Dasamuka gives an example of how a previously colonized voice.
So what you are actually saying is that in Dasamuka, the role of the Westerner has kind of been reversed.
Yes.
Yes, and so it's, in essence, it is us Indonesians taking back what originally belonged to us to start with.
Yes, so it's,
Yes.
it's a
Great.
taking
Yes.
over. Yeah.
Yes. So, what do you think makes it worse, a translation?
Okay, so
Not Dasamuka, just any Indonesian novel. If it were to be presented to you as a literary critic, and they would say, Pak Ari, do you think I should shop for a translation? What is your basis of your answer?
okay, so I think our country's problem is we have a very bad case of historical and cultural historical amnesia, and therefore works of literature, any work of literature, especially Dasamuka, helps us to heal from that historical amnesia. So if that work is able to help us retrieve and recall and remember, then that work is worth. If it's worth, it has some worth to us, then it is worth translating and sharing with everybody else in the world.
Thank you. So then, what is your advice to an aspiring fiction writer in general and historical fiction in particular? When they come to you and they say, Pak Ari, I have this naskah, this manuscript. What do you think? How do you think I should go about it? I want to be published. The dream of every writer.
I think the advice would be the same advice I gave to myself. First, do you believe in what you're writing? If you don't write it. And if you want to write it, just read it yourself, don't share it with other people. So you have to have conviction in what you write. Secondly, especially for historical novels, you need research, right? Because as you say, right, accuracy. So in terms of accuracy, Pak Jun is so above Conrad and other Western writers. In terms of Indonesian history, Pak Jun is like they're nothing because they didn't do their research. They don't think it matters. So do your research, and the third thing is make sure that you hone on a craft and writing technique that suits the theme and the historical period. So because some people think that's just the way I write. That and you don't have to, you don't have to sort of like work at the technique, and that just comes out as sloppy.
Yeah, that is true. And by the way, poor Joan had to deal with me. Conrad didn't. So thank you very much for your participation into this panel. And now I will open questions from the floor. I hope you all have been participating and have questions for us now. Please, hands up. I don't see anyone. Time is ticking. Are we going to spend 15 minutes just looking at each other? Come on, please. Bu Arti, please. Thank you for saving the show.
So my question is about translation. So usually in translation theory, there are two what is your take on this? Are you trying to domesticate the text, meaning you will try to bring it to the culture of the target audience, or are you presenting it more as in that strategy, the foreignizing, kind of like let the foreign elements of the work remain and let them try to, do the work themselves, right? Make that connection with their own culture. Thank you.
Who are you directing the question to?
To Maya, and then maybe also to you, because I'm sure there's from a translator, then it has to go to an editor, and I don't know the process.
Yeah,
Dalang.
absolutely. So, Maya, you want to take it on first? Go ahead.
I think it's quite important to take a look of the manuscript first, and then see who's the narrative. And then what I did was I tried to understand the narrative's point of view, and but I let the Japanese, in this case the Japanese elements, stay within the story, and I didn't try to like make it as something that is so foreign for the readers, for the Western readers, and that's why I try to work the explanations into the narratives. So I usually leave the word alone, and then followed by the explanation, a short explanation, so that the Western readers, it might be a new concept for them, they will immediately understand what it's all about, and then they can continue reading the story.
So Maya has been very meticulous about this, because also you want to make today's Western reader enjoy the work, never mind in what era it has been set. So when Maya uses kind of new words, she always writes me aside in the track changes. Ibu, this word was first used in, and so then I know, okay, thank you, Maya, and that's why I love her, because she knows that I'm gut tech, and finding such things, information, for me, is a nightmare. And she just goes click, clack, click, and here it is, okay? So I appreciate that. Ari, did you have a comment?
Yes, I want to make a particular comment about the translation. As a reader, a translation of Dasamuka, and having read both versions, I think Dasamuka is more challenging than other books because first, in the story, the narrator spoke in English, presumably because he was Scottish. The other characters spoke in Dutch and Japanese. But Pak Jun wrote everything in Bahasa Indonesia, which means Pak Jun's original Bahasa Indonesia is not original because in the concept. So Pak Jun has already translated many things, and then Maya had to translate it into 21st century English, while the narrator Willem Kappers is speaking in 19th century English and writing in the way Raffles would be writing. So I must praise the people that had to go through, not me, I just had to read it, had to go through the process, like Pak Jun having to bring the early 20th century, 19th century to the 20th century, bring Japanese, Dutch, English into Bahasa Indonesia, and then, I think sometimes Maya returns to, for example, this is one example that you might want to think about. Pak Jun wrote Demam Berdarah. John Leyden.
John Leyden
died because of, according to Pak Jun, Demam Berdarah. But Maya said Batavian fever because that's what the report says. The report in English and Dutch says.
Yeah, and so, I did not edit that out, and neither did our editor.
Yeah.
I'm not the editor of Dalang Publishing. I hire a professional American editor for historical fiction. And that is why I'm very proud of my books, that the way they are. There's no nonsense language-wise with them. Okay, so she also, because she is an historical fiction editor, she did not question it. And because in my submission to her, I wrote that this is, FYI, it is dengue fever. But she chose not to make it dengue fever, but to keep it in Batavian fever because of the time. Yes, so we go through these hoops. Yeah.
So the role of the editor is still very important.
Oh, you can. I'm sorry. Now you really get me on a stool, because there is no work that should be published without proper editing. It is one thing that I am really riling about. It has no business, because as a publisher, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to the people that are reading, because you feed the brain of millions. What you put out there, a child will pick up, and whatever they read, whatever they read, this is what's happening. You know, and people don't understand there is a major difference between a publisher and a print shop. A print shop gets a manuscript or whatever, and they are paid to make a print. It is a paper that you can, it is very clear, it is nice, it is a crisp print. A publisher gets a manuscript and needs to go to work to make sure that whatever is on his manuscript, before it gets fed to the printing presses, and before, dear God help me, before it gets fed to the general public, it is a sound piece of literature. And that's where, you know, that's a big difference, basically, that we adhere to. Did I answer your question, Bharati?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's impressive because being an academic, so it's
Yeah, absolutely.
and stuff and in practice. So that's how I'm always interested in this, the medium between the theory and the practice.
And there is a big difference between academic publishing and fiction publishing. And there is a huge difference between historical fiction publishing and just general publishing. Quickly, because my time is up, I think. You have 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I'm keeping time, so.
Right. I have this actually very generic question on the translated literary works. There is a theory saying that in translation, the choice is between, you know, whether it's beautiful or faithful. You cannot have both.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Just a second.
Yeah. I'm
So
sorry.
if it's beautiful, it's not faithful. If it's faithful, it's not beautiful. I just would like you to comment on this. And the second thing is your explanation just now. For instance, the explanation began by Pak Ali by saying that the original text says that it's dengue fever.
No, demam berdarah.
Demam berdarah, and then it's then in the translation it's
Batavian.
Batavia fever.
But at the time, Raffles said that it
That-
Exactly. So it is exactly this point, I think, that makes translation is not the second copy whose characteristic is less original than the original, because the anachronism that was existing in the original text, you know, demam berdarah was not yet identified at the time, lost in the translation. In literary analysis, this kind of anachronism, sometimes very telling to analyze further what lies behind. And then suddenly in this translation, there is no anachronism at all. Then I think this is another evidence for me to see how translation of literary works is worth analyzing in itself, not merely as a second copy, but how it is also a product of a certain ideology of, for example, historical publishing house and so on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you when you were saying that a faithful translation cannot be a beautiful translation. And you hit me on the core there, because that is what I am fighting. Okay, Indonesian language is a beautiful language, and it is very, very rich. English, I hate to bring it to you, is kind of a very cold language. And I do not want ever, without going into the unnecessary turning around, which an Indonesian writer has the tendency of doing, okay, to lose the beauty of his language, or a subtle nuance in our nature. Our nature is beautiful, and there are things that happen in our nature that the Westerner has no clue. And to lose that is a sin. It's a sin. Because you do not do your job as a translator. You do not transfer culture, atmosphere, feeling. The feeling of an Indonesian man outwardly, when he is in love and he expresses his feelings, is totally different from a Westerner. We dealt with that, didn't we, June? And so, you know, yeah, June in Dasamuka chose to have a Western narrator. So sometimes it came out as an Indonesian man who June is. And I told him, I said, now that you chose to have this character, now put yourself into his body. If you cannot do that, you cannot write the character. That is what makes characterization. That is the craft of writing. And what Pa Ari said before, if you want to write, you believe in it, then you write it. And you do not hide or shortchange yourself as well as your reader. So this is where I jumped on when you said, you know, because that's not true. I translated, Dalang Publishing translated the Red Bekisar, the Bekisar Merah from Pak Tuhari. You know who Pak Tuhari is, you know how his descriptions are, and it is in Bekisar Merah. I'm very proud of that. Yeah. Thank you very much. My time is up, and I don't want to steal from the next panel. So, thank you. Thank you.
Let's give Dalang Publisher a big applause again. Thank you very much for the presentation. And please kindly leave the presentation desk and take a seat in the audience seat. And I now invite the second presenters to sit on the presentation desk.